Everybody has their own champs that have absolutely changed their account. Today, I am going to be giving you 10 of mine. What's up, everybody? I am Felrus, sailing the seas of Raid Shadow Legends, and today I'm going to be going through the list of my 10 favorite legendary champions that I use everywhere, champions that have changed my account in many ways, and you may be surprised by number 10, so stick around till the end of the video for that. Real quick, click the link in the description to get a free Bambus as well as Ugo at level 15. Here's how to do it. Log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champ. This is where you'll find your free Bambus as well as Ugo at level 15. This gives you an insane start in Raid Shadow Legends, so click that link and let's crush this together. Alright guys, so first on the list, it's going to be my guy, the Cheshire Cat. So I love the Cheshire Cat. If you've watched any of my live arena videos, this dude is absolutely insane, right? He looks sick and he's really good. And not just for PvP, but also for PvE. What exactly does he do? Well, on his A3, Grinning Helix, he attacks all enemies. Before attacking, places a perfect Veil buff and a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. On the A2, Feline Frenzy, on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit will decrease the enemy's speed by 1%, stacks up to 10%. This effect does not work against bosses. Each hit will also increase the champion's speed by 1%, stacks up to 10%. If this skill kills an enemy, places a perfect Veil buff on this champion and the ally with the lowest turn meter for 2 turns. Then the A1 here, Phase Claw, attacks one enemy. If this champion is under a Veil or perfect Veil buff, attacks all enemies instead, places a perfect Veil buff on this champion for 1 turn. And his passive here, if this champion is under a Veil or perfect Veil buff, turn meter fill effects are 30% more effective. Also, if this champion is under a Veil or perfect Veil buff, this champion's attacks will ignore 15% of the target's defense and inflict 15% more damage. Active effect, whenever on a 3-turn cooldown here, whenever this champion is about to receive a hit that would drop their HP below 20%, blocks the incoming damage and places a block damage and perfect Veil buff on the champion for 1 turn. Because of this passive, he can solo dungeons. In Arena, he's getting extra turns when he kills someone, which just allows him to AoE A1 constantly. In Hydra, all you really need is the A1 and occasionally this A3, because his damage is based on speed as well, so ramping his speed will actually ramp his damage. As far as stats go, I have him with almost 270 speed, right? 6.2k attack and 274 crit damage. He is in a cat's gaze. The Cheshire Cat is an absolutely insane champion. He smacks really hard. One of my favorite champions on my account. For sure. All right, next on the list, we've got the Queen of Hearts here. Now, the Queen of Hearts is a really interesting champion and a really cool champion. On her A1, she has an AoE with a drop defense for 2 turns. Big version also fills the turn meters of all allies by 5%. That's a fantastic A1. AoE drop defense on an A1 is amazing. On the A2, removes all buffs from all enemies, then places a Death Brand debuff on the initial target for 2 turns. Also places a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Fills this champion's turn meter by 5% for each buff removed by this skill. So she's going to fill her turn meter on her A1. She's going to fill her turn meter on her A2. And then she has an ally attack. So Queenly Command teams up with all allies to attack a single enemy. Before attacking, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. Decreases the cooldowns of this champion's off with their head skill by 2 turns if the target is killed. This is a absolutely fantastic skill. Again, on a 4-turn cooldown, just like the A2. And then her passive makes her incredibly good for Arena. Hail to the Queen. For every 10 buffs the enemy team receives, grants this champion an extra turn. What the heck? It's okay in Hydra as well, but really this is going to be used in Arena. She cuts in, built-in supersonic set, right? And then buff strips everyone. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. Queen of Hearts is a fantastic champion. I use her all over. Fire Knight, Doom Tower, pretty much anywhere in live arena as well for the Death Brand and the True Fear with the buff strip, right? AoE drop defense on an A1 with an ally attack is absolutely fantastic, right? This champion is really simple, but she's very good, and I was lucky enough to win her from the Champion Chase, I believe. Champion Chase tournament. Queen of Hearts is a fantastic champion as well. All right, next on the list is going to be Elva Autumnborn. So Elva Autumnborn is actually available through the Revival Path. It's like a $20 pass or something, and she is a absolutely fantastic champion, right? So Scepter of Thriving, her A1, attacks one enemy, places a 15% continuous heal buff for 2 turns on the ally with the lowest HP. Every single time she A1s, putting a continuous heal out there is amazing, especially with ally attackers. On her A2 here on a 3-turn cooldown, has a 75% chance of removing all debuffs from all allies. That does book to 100% chance. Places a block debuffs buff and a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. She's got speed up, she's got block debuffs with a full cleanse. It's absolutely amazing on a 3-turn cooldown as well. And then her A3 Sprouting Season revives a target ally with 40% HP and 50% turn meter, then places a 60% increased defense buff and a 50% increased attack buff on the ally for 2 turns, also on a 3-turn cooldown. Not the best revive in the world, but it does really go well with her kit, right? She provides absolutely fantastic support and even more support with this Leaf Shroud passive here. Heals each ally by 10% of their max HP at the start of their turn, places a perfect Veil buff for 1 turn on the ally with the lowest HP at the end of this champion's turn. I still use Elva like almost everywhere in the game. She's on my Dragon Hard 10 team. I believe she's in my Ice Golem team as well. She can duo Ice Golem normal with Bod El Khazar, right? And she is one of the best supports on my entire account. I use her like everywhere for so many of the Doom Tower bosses as well. 299 speed in a 8-piece protection. I can do the 9-piece, but I lose like 20 speed, so I don't think that's worth it. And then I have her awakened with Intimidating Presence as well, because she is my speed lead in so many areas of content that I like to have the aura boost. All right, next on the list is going to be my guy Prince Kymar. So Prince Kymar, I got this guy almost a year ago now. I was just randomly pulling some ancient shards for, I think, a clan versus clan, and out pops Kymar. So here he is. On his A1, attacks all enemies, places a 5% poison debuff for 1 turn if this attack is critical. You can build him with crit rate. You can build him as a nuker to get the poisons. On the A2 here, attacks all enemies, removes all buffs, places a sleep debuff for 1 turn. Very, very good. Buff strip with crowd control. Absolutely fantastic. On his A3 here, Seal of Magic on a 6-turn cooldown, resets the cooldowns of all ally skills, fills the turn meter of all allies except this champion by 20%. So he does have a turn meter boost with cooldown reset. Use this guy in basically every dungeon that you want to speed farm, that you can speed farm, right? Have him not use this on the first wave. Second wave, if he's your fastest champ, he opens with this. You get all your damage, all your debuffs back. I have him built in 5 pieces of Supersonic. It gets him extra speed, as well as fills this champion's turn meter by 2% for each buff on each enemy, right? Really good for arena. I used him in arena for a long time, still do sometimes. Then in pinpoint with an extra 20 accuracy and 10% speed, he's coming in with 307 speed and 330 accuracy as well. Prince Kymar, I didn't realize what a game changer this guy was, but he is absolutely fantastic. He doesn't get enough love on my account. He's there to fire off 1 skill maybe once in a dungeon, and but that 1 skill is absolutely a game-changing skill, right? Next on the list is going to be a past fusion. We all know him. We all love him. It's going to be my dude, Thor Feyhammer. First of all, he absolutely looks sick, right? He looks sick. His hammer is super cool, right? He's got the frost giant mask on his back there, which is pretty awesome as well. What exactly does Thor do? Well, on his A1, Wrath of Mjolnir, attacks 1 enemy 2 times, has a 20% chance of repeating the attack. Each hit decreases the target's turn meter by 10%. So he's got turn meter control. He's got a 20% chance of repeating the double hit A1, and that 20% chance keeps applying, right? So it's an absolutely fantastic A1. It can just delete boss health bars, right? And then his Voluminous Ricochet on a 3-turn cooldown attacks all enemies. After hitting the initially selected enemy, all other enemies will be hit in a random order. Each subsequent hit following the initial hit will increase the damage inflicted by 25%, stacks up to 100%, will ignore block damage and unkillable buffs. This effect does not work against bosses. So basically, he can be your arena nuker, ignoring block damage and unkillable with this skill. He's a fantastic Hydra champion. Like, this dude is like top tier for Hydra damage. On his A3 Hammer of Heaven, on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies before attacking, places a 50% increased attack buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. Has a 75% chance of permanently decreasing the resistance of each enemy by 10%, stacks up to 50%. That does book to 100% chance. Also has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, also books to a 100% chance. Then on his passive, his A2 already ramps his damage, but then on his passive, Sky Rupture, every time this champion deals damage, increases the thunder counter by 1, stacks up to 10. Each thunder stack increases this champion's damage by 3%, stacks up to 30%. Once the thunder counter reaches 10, attacks all enemies and places a stun debuff for 1 turn. After the attack, the thunder counter resets to 0. Guys, this guy is all about damage, right? AoE damage galore, even a passive damage dealing skill, right? I have him built in lethal, speed, and pinpoint. He's got 5.7k attack, 308, crit damage, and 188 accuracy. Sometimes he'll land his decreased speed. Most of the time, he won't, though. As far as a blessing goes, I have Phantom Touch, but I should probably change that to Nature's Wrath. Thor is an absolutely top-tier damage dealer. I do have a lot of damage dealers, so only 2 of them made the list today. No, sorry, 3 of them made the list today. 1 is still coming. Next on the list, number 7, we've got my guy Grand Oak Podrick. Now, Grand Oak Podrick is a fantastic support. On his A1, Snake Root, attacks 1 enemy, has a 25% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random ally's active skill by 2 turns. That books to a 50% chance. So it's really solid, right? Then on his A2, Weird Spores on a 4-turn cooldown, teams up with all allies to attack a single enemy. The allies joining the attack will use their default skills, but this guy with Thor, right? Thor has a chance of repeating his A1. Also fully restores all allies destroyed max HP and places a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. He's got healing, he's got restore destroyed max HP, which is more useful than you'd think, all on an ally attack on a 4-turn cooldown with cooldown reduction on his A1. On his A3 here, Inspiring Rhythm on a 3-turn cooldown fully booked, fills the turn meters of all allies by 20%, then removes all debuffs from all allies and places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Turn meter fill, cleanse, and increase speed. It's an absolutely fantastic A3 for a 3-turn cooldown. Then on his passive here, Grand Oak's Magic, 1-turn cooldown. At the start of this champion's turn, places a buff on each ally for 1 turn depending on their type. Attack get increased attack, defense get increased defense, supports get increased accuracy, and HP champions get a shield buff equal to 30% of their max HP. So every single turn, he's going to be buffing your team with probably what they need most. He's going to be turn meter filling, cleansing, giving you an ally attack, giving you healing, and giving you cooldown reduction. This dude is a absolute monster. I have him in my 2nd fastest gear, coming in at 346 speed. For a blessing, I went with Survival Instinct. Grand Oak Podrick, I'm lucky enough to have 2 of them, and I do use both of them. He is a absolutely fan-stinkin-tastic champion, right? And he's very good. All right, now on to another one of my favorite champions from the Undead Hordes faction, if I can find him here. Bad El-Khazar. Now, Bad El-Khazar is an oldie but a goodie, right? He has a very basic kit. He kind of does one thing, but he doesn't really do one thing. He does a lot for having 2 skills. All right, so on his A1, a Dark Sphere attacks all enemies, heals this champion and all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted. Very good. You can build him with crit rate. You can build him with ignore defense gear. He'll be absolutely pumping out healing with this A1. On the A2, Malice on a 3-turn cooldown removes all debuffs from all allies, places 2 continuous heal buffs on all allies for 2 turns, places 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns. He's got a full cleanse, healing for your entire team, and damage on the enemy, all on a 3-turn cooldown. And then his passive here, Prey Upon all allies, inflict 20% more damage against targets under poison debuffs. The guy is absolutely fantastic. I have him awakened with Brimstone, so he can put out, because he's going to be A1ing and a ton, right? So he can put out some Brimstone as well for some extra damage there. He can boost your damage dealers, he can cleanse, he can heal, he can poison. This dude is absolutely fantastic. Definitely pull him out. I think he can solo Ice Golem by himself if you have him built fast and tanky enough. The guy is amazing. Along the same lines, we've got Corvus the Corrupted. Now, Corvus doesn't have any healing, but he is a great poisoner and a great protector. The Reductive Process attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. Medical Miracle on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies 2 times. The first hit increases the duration of all enemy debuffs by 1 turn. Second hit increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn, helping you keep your buffs and debuffs out there. Then on his A3, this is the skill that's really good. On a 4-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing 2 5% poison debuffs for 2 turns. That books to a 100% chance. After attacking, places a 25% poison sensitivity debuff on all enemies under 2 or more poison debuffs. Absolutely fantastic skill, right? One of the best poisoners in the game. He has decreased attack as well. And then his passive decreases the damage enemies under poison debuffs inflict 5% less damage per poison debuff, up to 25%. So up to 25% damage mitigation with a decreased attack A1, poisons, extending the poisons, extending your buffs, all of that good stuff. Corvus the Corruptor is an absolutely fantastic champion, probably the best poisoner in the game, honestly. He's giving you so much that you need. Guys, I forgot to mention, this guy was like number 2 or 3 on the list, but Korugar Deathbell deserves a much higher spot, much higher spot in the ranking of free champions. I did forget to mention him, unfortunately. So on his A1, Strange Animus attacks one enemy, heals the champion by 10% of their max HP. I've had this guy forever. That A1 is still one of the best on my account. Let's see. Bell's Toll on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of filling the turn meters of all allies by 30%. Also has a 75% chance of removing all debuffs from all allies. That does, of course, book up to a 100% chance. He's got turn meter fill on an AoE hit on a full cleanse. Like, what the heck? And it's some of the best turn meter fill in the entire game, actually. So this Bell's Toll, it also hits decently hard as well. So there's that on top of it. On the A3, Conduit of Agonies, also on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Also places a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns. If that is 75% damage mitigation right there. He's nice and tanky, HP based, so he can take all those hits, right? And if that wasn't enough tankiness, Violence Locust, the passive, increases this champion's resistance by 20 and defense by 10% for each ally protection buff on allies. So he'll get a little bit of extra resistance, which is really good because he has a cleanse, right, on his A2. And then he'll also just take even less damage from the ally protections because he's going to be increasing his defense. Also increases ally resistance by 15 and defense by 5% for each ally protection buff on allies. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. He's making himself a lot tankier. He's making your allies a little bit more tanky in addition to the damage reduction that he has on his A3. It's absolutely insane. I do believe defense mitigates damage from ally protection. I think that's the case. Not entirely sure though. Counterattacks whenever an ally under an ally protection buff is attacked can occur once per enemy turn. I still use this guy basically everywhere on so many Doom Tower teams. In my clan boss team, he has War Master, right? Because he's going to be counterattacking so much that I just put War Master on him for a little bit of extra damage. As far as stats go, I have him at 257 speed with 100k HP and 2.5k defense. We don't have a relic on him yet, but this dude is still one of the best champions on my account, and that's after playing and having him for, I think I've had him for over a year now. I've been playing for about a year and a half. I've had this guy forever, and I still love him. All right. So what is number 10 on the list? Well, let's see. I debated putting Esme on the list. AoE increase attack A1, AoE weaken and block buffs on the A2, full buff strip with increased accuracy and increased speed for your team, and then she'll be boosting the ally with the highest attack by 50% every time she's hit. I debated putting Ninja on the team, on the list. Ninja with the A1 that absolutely smacks with decreased defense, the Hail Burn that absolutely melts bosses, and the Science Slash that reduces the cooldown of the Hail Burn, as well as his absolutely ramping passive, right? But actually, I went with Blade Chorister Caldor. Now, that might be like, is he better than Ninja? No, he's not better than Ninja. But this dude is so fun to play with, right? Especially with an all-Sylvan team, that I had to put him on the list as one of my favorite legendaries, right? On his A1, Dagger Song attacks all enemies, has a 15% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, will ignore 20% of each target's resistance for each continuous heal buff on this champion. On his A2, gosh, the Orchestra of War is just such a skill. select this target. This is on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked. If the target is an enemy, decreases the duration of all buffs on all enemies by 1 turn, places a 5% poison debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and an additional 5% poison for 2 turns for each continuous heal buff on this champion. These debuffs cannot be resisted. Then instantly activates all poison debuffs on all enemies, so he's a poison activator with irresistible poisons, which is fantastic. If the target is an ally, increases the duration of all buffs on all allies by 1 turn, and instantly activates all continuous heal buffs on all allies, places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns, also places a 15% continuous heal buff on this champion for 2 turns, and another 15% continuous heal buff for each alive ally for 2 turns, finally fills this champion's turn meter by 15% for each buff or debuff placed by this skill. On auto, he never uses the poisons, he always puts the continuous heals on himself, which is actually totally fine. It works surprisingly well, and he has increased buff duration. Like, he is absolutely fantastic as a support as well as a damage dealer. On his A3, Rhythms Crescendo, also, like, yeah, on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked, attacks one enemy before attacking, has a 100% chance of removing all buffs from the target and placing a 60% decreased defense debuff and a 25% weakened debuff on the target for 2 turns. Will ignore 20% of the target's resistance for each continuous heal buff on this champion. He goes in, self-buffs with the A2, grants himself an extra turn most of the time, and then goes in with the drop defense and weaken. Then he's got the Sylvan Watcher's Unity. With 1 faction ally, removes all buffs from all enemies if the initial target is killed. This buff removal cannot be resisted. 2 faction allies will ignore 5% of the target's defense for each poison debuff on them and each continuous heal buff on this champion. With 3 faction allies, if the initial target is under a poison debuff, also attacks all other enemies. The damage dealt is proportional to the initial target's max HP and how many poison debuffs are on them. If the initial target is a boss or a minion, the damage dealt is equal to 10% of their max HP. That's an absolutely fantastic skill. He's got a max HP extra hit on his Rhythms Crescendo for everybody else. It's an absolutely fantastic skill against bosses, absolutely fantastic against waves as well. It's a very good wave clearing skill if you can put 3 faction allies around him. Then on his passive, Sylvan Symphony, as if this guy wasn't insane enough already, will ignore 15% of a target's defense when attacking while under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. Fantastic. This champion receives a 30% less damage from enemies when not under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. With the Sylvan Watcher's Unity, 1 faction ally, each continuous heal buff on this champion increases their crit rate by 20%, so he doesn't even need full crit rate if you have a Sylvan team around him. 2 faction allies, each time a continuous heal buff activates on this champion, also fills their turn meter by 8%, so he's just going to be constantly filling his own turn meter, especially since he's always going to have continuous heal buffs up with this A2. Then with 3 faction allies, each time a continuous heal buff activates on this champion or an ally, increases this champion's damage by 5%, stacks up to 150%. So this guy needs the faction allies with him, but he's just such a cool champ. He hits so hard. It's awesome. I usually have a Cat's Gaze on him. I only have 3, so I have to switch one around. Usually I put this one that's on Yakarl. I usually have it on my Caldor. He is an awesome champion. He is a really fun champion. Guys, let me know your most fun champions in the comments below. What champions changed your account and do you still use? I have been Felris, sailing the seas of Red Shadow Legends, and I will see you in another video.